And we're back, folks, right here on WWE Network and Chill, where every single Monday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, run down all the original content I watch on the network. Today, we're breaking down another episode of Table for Three, this time World Champion Legacy, airing last week after Monday Night Raw, featuring Ric Flair, Randy Orton, and Bruno Sammartino. Someone brought it to my attention after last week's episode went up with the creative committee with Michael P.S. Hayes, Jim Cornette, and Eric Bischoff. Great episode, by the way, that it was edited tremendously. Apparently, it was like an hour and a half conversation, obviously trimmed, edited down to like 30 minutes, not even like 20 minutes, which is no shocker. I'm sure they do that for every conversation they have on Table for Three, so this is no surprise. People are begging for the unedited version, not the uncensored version, but like the uncut version of Table for Three, which would be cool for that episode, but if they do it with that show, they would have to do it with every show, because I'm sure every conversation they have on this show, and they've had a lot of episodes since 2015, has been edited down to like 20 minutes from like at least an hour, so that's no shocker, but that's really neither here nor there. It was a great episode as it was, though. This one was also pretty good, like I said, with Flair, Orton, and Sammartino. Originally, I thought it was supposed to be Bob Orton, and then I saw Randy Orton. I'm like, oh, that's even more interesting. I like Bob Orton, but Orton, to me, is more interesting. He has more history with Flair, in WWE anyway, at least later on. Sammartino, like an interesting mix, where it's not just like the legends of yesteryear with Flair and Sammartino. Orton is a current star. Flair was an old star, but was also in the current WWE. And then Sammartino was a part of the old guard, so you had a cool mix there. They kick it off with Ric Flair talking about his multiple world championship reigns. He jokes about Orton catching up. And Flair says unofficially he held 21 championships. It changes depending on who you talk to. In WWE, it's 7 or 16 rather. Cena has now currently tied the record after Money in the Bank earlier this year. But to Ric Flair, according to Ric Flair, it is 21. So it's funny they wouldn't cut that part out, because even Ric Flair admits it's more than WWE likes to promote, but apparently it is 21. He talks about being old, and Sammartino says the same thing, and it's weird, because Orton's not old. I mean, he's not as old as Sammartino and Flair, but he's been in the company for over 15 years at this point, which is interesting. But Sammartino talks about, meeting Ric Flair for the first time many, many years ago when he was first starting in the business. Randy Orton and Flair remember their lifestyle during Evolution, and then when Orton was just kind of starting the business and partying all the time, all that other shit, which Flair absolutely loved. Sammartino talks about growing up in Italy before the war, and how I forgot what it was. I don't know if he was sick or had a disease or something like that. I didn't catch that part, but his mom told him that he was cured by leeches. They put leeches on him to suck out like the venom or the poison, whatever it was. And when they went to the doctor, he was cured. And they were like, what did you do to do that? And he's like, I got eaten by leeches. And they said, no, that doesn't work. And apparently it did. So take that for what it's worth, but I thought it was interesting. A cool little story there. He talks about breaking into wrestling. Orton talks about buying a Rolex watch after winning his first world championship. And Flair says it's not what people do anymore nowadays after they win their first world title. And he even says titles bounce around a lot, which is true, especially the world championship. Look at the fucking WWE title. John Cena won it at the Royal Rumble. Bray Wyatt won it at Elimination Chamber. Orton won it at WrestleMania. Then Jinder Mahal won it at Backlash. That's fucking ridiculous. That's terrible. So, yeah, he's right. Just world title wins do not mean nearly as much as they used to back in the day. It's still a cool moment, but he is right that maybe not in like Orton's time, but even before that. But yeah, like when Orton won, he went over the top in buying a fucking Rolex watch. Like your first big purchase as a world champion, which I guess is still meaningful. Some people buy like their first car and shit. I don't know, with their first paycheck. I don't know. But I see what he's saying, though. Sammartino talks about working every day of the week and twice on the weekends. So all the fucking speculation that these people back in the day like Hogan and Sammartino would wrestle once a week on the weekends at MSG is such bullshit. They were working every bit as much as the people of today, if not more. So that's not even close to being true. I mean, they weren't airing their title defenses every month like they do on pay-per-view nowadays, but they didn't need to. They were bringing people into the houses. They were packing houses, bringing in, jam-packed crowds and shit like that. So it was a tough life even then, even 50 years ago. Sammartino told Vince McMahon Sr. that his body was breaking down due to the rigorous schedule, and then he endorsed Ivan Koloff as his successor. Now, that's a primary reason why they took the championship off of him, was because Sammartino was kind of winding down his career. His body was killing him. That was obviously after he had lost, or not lost the WWE Championship, but broke his neck in Shea Stadium against Stan Hansen. So that was interesting for them to talk about. Not the Stan Hansen neck breaking thing they talked about in the Hansen. They talked about that in the Stan Hansen episode with a while back. Yeah, Hansen, Larry Zbyszko, and Bob Backlund. I have my notes right here for that, but yeah, so he talks about that, and I thought it was interesting. He endorsed Ivan Koloff as champion. Ivan Koloff, shockingly enough, is not in the WWE Hall of Fame, which is really weird. He just passed away earlier this year, so the big Russian Bear, as his nickname was never inducted into the Hall of Fame while he was alive, which sucks. And he has yet to be inducted. I mean, he died, I think, after WrestleMania, so he should hopefully be inducted at some point, being a former WWE champion. But even San Martino said that he felt bad for Koloff after not getting a big break, after having only a 3-week reign. They put the championship from him onto Bob Backlund, which was great. He endorsed Bob Backlund, but he felt bad for Koloff and just being a transitional champion and not getting a longer reign after San Martino was champion for like fucking 8 years on and off. And then Koloff gets a 3-week reign. He kind of felt bad for Koloff, which I thought was interesting. Ric Flair says he didn't think he was ready to win his first world championship at 31 from Dusty Rhodes. And then he talks a lot about Harley Race. He shares a lot of stories about Harley Race and their early days in the business and how he ended up going on to win his next world championship, or a second or third, I forgot what it was, the NWA title, I believe, from Harley Race later on. And at that point, he felt ready to win the world title. He talks about how Harley Race could suplex Andre the Giant and the Giant Baba from Japan, a Japanese wrestling legend, which is fucking insane to think that he could not only suplex Andre, but like he said, he could hold him up in the air with his entire body weight. That is incredible. I don't know if anyone else could do that, but that's amazing to think about. I don't know if you ever saw that on TV. But yeah, to close out, they talk about very briefly about Ric Flair and Bruno loving their statues that were made of them over WrestleMania weekend. I think San Martino was WrestleMania 30 weekend, I want to say. And then Flair was this year. So that was WrestleMania 33. I think it was San Martino over WrestleMania 30 weekend. WrestleMania 31 weekend, I think, was the Ultimate Warrior. 32 weekend was Dusty Rhodes. And then this year was Ric Flair, which is pretty cool. And then the joke, just kind of on a laughing matter to end the episode, Ric Flair says that he hopes Evolution one day gets inducted into the Hall of Fame so he can have 3 rings, in addition to the ones that he already has from being inducted by himself in 2008, being inducted with the Four Horsemen in 2012, and then being inducted with Evolution years down the road, which is he's probably right. Evolution will probably go into the Hall of Fame, as they should, for launching the careers of Orton and Batista and all the success they had for like 3 years straight. So he's probably not wrong. So Flair might be. He's the only 2-time Hall of Fame inductee as of right now into the WWE Hall of Fame. Might be only a matter of time before he gets inducted for a 3rd time with the rest of Evolution. So that closed out the episode. World Champion Legacy with Ric Flair, Randy Orton, and Bruno Sammartino. Like I said, a good show. Nothing must-see. I thought the Bruno talk about Koloff was interesting. Flair and Orton reuniting was cool. Orton, the thing about this episode is that you don't really see too many interviews. I mean, you see a lot of Ric Flair. It's always cool to hear from Ric Flair. And the reason why this episode is so special is because you don't hear too much from Randy Orton in this kind of setting, or Bruno Sammartino. I mean, Sammartino is still with the company, obviously, but you don't really hear or see too much of Bruno in WWE. He's never been on Raw, I don't think, on air, in the 4 years he's been back with the company, which is interesting. He should have been, and he should be, but he hasn't been so far. I don't know what role they would have for him. I mean, he's a champion. He's like he's one of the greatest champions of all time, but what would you really do with a guy from like 50 years ago, I get. So I understand that, but anyway, you don't really hear too much of Sammartino, too much from Sammartino in interviews and stuff, and same thing with Randy Orton. So definitely interesting to check out, and I know Orton's been on, I think, the Unfiltered show. He's definitely been on Unfiltered with Renee Young, and maybe one of the other shows on the network. So you don't see too much of Orton in this kind of setting, so check it out when you can. I thought this was a good episode. You might enjoy it. So again, World Champion Legacy with Flair, Randy Orton, not Bob Orton, and Bruno Sammartino. So once again, guys, thank you for checking out the show. I appreciate your support. Be sure to drop a like, a comment, share the video, subscribe to the channel for daily content. And until next week's episode, next Monday, we're talking about whatever airs on the network tonight, which I think is a new Bring It to the Table episode. And then the week after that is another Table for 3 with, I think, Kelly, Maurice, and Eve. So that should be interesting too. So I guess if Bring It to the Table airs tonight, then we are talking about it on next week's WWE Network and Chill. So that being said, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.